Excuse me. You want to give some room to the family?
You alright? Sharon, that's your spot right in front. I gave you a name already, so you have to raise your hand. Microphone is like my hand. I can see Sharon right there.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. I have a speech prepared, not necessarily a speech, but a statement prepared on behalf of my sister and my brother-in-law, Tony Robinson Sr. and Andrea Irwin. So bear with me as I read off of my device. Okay. I know that there are many questions people want and need answered. So I wanted to make a brief statement in regards to my nephew, Tony Terrell Robinson Jr., on behalf of my sister, Andrea Irwin, and his father, Tony Robinson Sr. First of all, I, along with my family, as you see, we are so grateful for the support that Tony has received. It's truly humbling to know that people knew the type of person that my nephew was, and they don't judge him based on the things that have been circulating around, much of which is misinformation. And it's really humbling, and it means a lot during these times. I want everybody, and I encourage everybody to show support regardless of race, because this is truly a universal issue. Everybody should be able to relate to this issue. And that's why it's so important that we have this support. Tony's racial ambiguity reinforces the fact that America's racial lines are completely and 100% blurred. My sister is a white mother of a black children, who have white and black relatives. We are all multiple races, and we each have our own complex heritage. There's no way you can look at me, there's no way you can look at Tony or any of my nephews and to be able to determine 100% what we are in terms of our heritage and our ethnicity. This is a bigger issue than Tony. This highlights a universal problem with law enforcement and how its procedures have been carried out, especially in light of what's happened over the summertime and many of the events that we've witnessed circulating around the news. And specifically, as it pertains to the systematic targeting of young black males. My family grew up here in Madison. I grew up down the street on Ingersoll, North Ingersoll Street. I lived on Dayton Street. I lived on Willie Street at different points in my life. My mom has been a resident of the East Side virtually ever since I can remember being in Madison. And honestly, it's so hard to come to grips with the fact that my nephew was killed in an area that we have been such a big part of and that means so much to us. Wisconsin in general, but particularly the East Side. Everybody from here, we knows what Willie Street is. We know what Willie Street is and what it means to us. And this is supposed to be a very liberal area, if not the most liberal area of Madison, Wisconsin. So, fellow Madisonians, our hands are stained with the blood of my nephew, and we are all left to deal with the aftermath. He belongs now to everyone, and that's something that we've had to accept. He is now a champion of progress. Law enforcement, I want to make this clear, law enforcement is necessary. In most cases, their efforts are very heroic, and we don't doubt that at all. I implore you all to support as much as possible, but my family asks for privacy, especially from the media. There will be a time to address all the questions that needed answers, that need and demand answers. But for now, we ask the privacy needed to grieve the loss of a true staple of our family. There's one issue that my sister wants to be put to rest. Tony Robinson Jr. is not a father of any child, nor has he ever been involved in any paternity suit. I emphasize the word junior. The circulation of false information is hurtful, and I ask that we all just hesitate to speak on anything until the facts have been made clear. This needs to be heard. I need everybody to hashtag Tony Robinson. Spread the word. Let's get justice for everyone who fell through the cracks of the justice system, because something needs to change. And at this point, it's obvious, like I said, it's so hard for us to let go of Tony because he meant so much to us. And even now, I almost feel stoic in my demeanor here, being in the same spot that my nephew was murdered. I'm 5 years older than him. He's more like a little brother. I had to learn how to be a nephew. So with that being said, I just encourage everybody to support as much as possible. Hashtag Tony Robinson, hashtag Justice for Tony, FOR for Tony. There's a Facebook page. I know there's a lot of independent organizations doing a lot to bring awareness and support, and we want to know that we appreciate you. We truly, truly, truly appreciate you. Anything that we can do to bring awareness, because we are completely unbiased in this. Yes, Tony was a loved one of ours, and we will miss him, and there's nothing that we can do to bring him back. But we want to know the facts of the matter and nothing else. So with that idea in mind, I will be taking a couple questions.
Can you tell us about it?
Please understand that I will be screening anything specific to the details of the investigation. May as well not be asked because I cannot and am not in a position to answer them. I will do my best to answer the questions that I can answer. Yes.
How do you describe since Friday what your family was about? Is it any easier to deal with now?
No. And that's something that I spoke to a lot to my father and a lot of people that I look up to and go to advice that this is something we're going to deal with for the rest of our lives. So I can speak for myself in terms of me. I know my family has had a very hard time dealing with this, and it's in terms of me, it's pretty much surreal, you know. 1 second you look at hashtags and you realize that's my nephew, and you know they speak about Tony's grandmother, and I'm like, yeah, that's my mom. So it's very surreal. I really haven't come to grips with it. I just haven't, because there's just so much that still needs to be done. So, and that's why the privacy is that much more important. Yes?
There was about 2,000 people on the rotunda today. What would you say to the people that want to get involved and want to make change on that?
Yes. Please support as much as possible. We need to bring awareness to everybody. That's the most important thing about everything. People knowing what's going on, and having all the facts of the matter. Now, what I do ask, we are not proponents of anti-police in terms of the chants that I hear going on in regards to not trusting police. We don't condone that, because we understand that this was an individual act that obviously the entire police department has to take the responsibility for. But we understand that cops are necessary. I shouldn't call them cops. Police officers, law enforcement is necessary and mandatory, and it's something that we need to change our mindset about the police, and that starts with procedural action as opposed to just singling out all the police officers as negative, because they're a necessary entity in our society.
How would you characterize the way your family's been treated by the Department of Criminal Investigation?
There's very little I want to say about that, but I will say I'm very upset with the way they've been treated. My sister has still not been able to see my nephew, her son, and in some regards I think it's been handled a lot better and a lot more respect afforded to us.
Can you tell us about your nephew? Tell us the cool things about him.
Well, he's known to Tony to most of his friends, but to the family he's known as Terrell, because we have Tony Sr. over here. Terrell, a lot of his identity was formed because of his racial ambiguity. Okay, he grew up, we lived in Stoughton for a while, which isn't as diverse as Madison, let's put it. And I remember frequently Terrell not being able to hang out with a lot of the kids because their mothers came and talked to us and said that they didn't want him hanging out with the black kids. So Terrell felt a misfit most of his life, and that's why we became so close. I noticed that from a young on. And Terrell just wanted to be loved, honestly. And for that reason, he kind of got love from bad people. Not bad people, but people making poor decisions. And as a result, made some poor decisions. And I think that's something we can all relate to. We don't think Tony's a saint. We don't think Terrell's a saint. We paint him as a human being, a 19-year-old who made a terrible mistake at one point, which is completely disassociated from this act, is what I want to make clear. And that's what's very upsetting, that they try to associate his past with this act to paint a picture about the type of kid he was. And I think we can all look back on things we did when we were 19 and thank God that we weren't caught for some of the things that we did. I know personally, I can say that. So I just want you guys to know that Terrell, he was a good, kind-hearted kid who was very happy and just wanted to be accepted and wanted to be loved. And that desire for love led him to bad places, but he was somebody who paid his debt to society, according to society, and was actively trying to better himself. And there's nothing else that we can ask of people. Yes.
The chief of police apparently came to your grandmother's house the evening it happened. You've expressed understanding to the police chief, and the chief of police has been apologetic. Do you accept his apology?
We're not going to comment that on that matter.
Have funeral arrangements?
Funeral arrangements have not been cemented yet. We're in the process of that, and as we know more information, we will absolutely let the people know, because I know a lot of people want to come and want to support, and we will give that opportunity 100%. Yes, we want absolutely peaceful protests. We want no tension, more further tension with police officers, because, like I said, this is an individual act that the enforcement agency is now responsible to in terms of PR. So we understand this is not how everything goes, and how, if I'm aware, I was made aware that earlier there was an incident where there was a man shooting live rounds, and he left the scene without being shot or injured, really. So to make it clear, we appreciate the police, and we understand the necessity for them, but but once again, that does not excuse what happened.
How are you coping with this?
That's a good question. Obviously, none of us have really experienced loss on this level, so there's no real blueprint on how to cope. So I can speak for myself. I haven't coped with it as of yet. I understand, but I haven't really dealt with the reality of the situation. That's something I'm prepared to do later when there's not as much business to handle, so to speak.
What have you been doing together in the past 48 hours?
Everything. You know, we move as a unit. We move as a unit. We try not to isolate anybody for too long. We just all want to be around and make it clear that, you know, it's okay to cry. It's okay to express your feelings. That's what makes us human. And every day you're human, it's a good day to be alive, right?
Based on what you know about this, are you convinced in your heart and your mind that your nephew should be alive?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yes.
100%. I won't comment further, but absolutely 100%. I'll take about 3 or 4 more questions.
You're aware that this is being compared to other cases around the nation. How does that impact you individually?
It's surreal. It's surreal because I absolutely remember hashtagging Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Eric Gardner. I'm personally from New York. I live in New York. I was born in Madison, Wisconsin. I moved up to New York when I was young. I immediately came through, obviously, once I found out what was happening. But it's surreal to realize my nephew is now a hashtag. Not to say that's all he is, but you know, to know that his physical presence will never be felt by me is something I'll definitely, you know, I'm never going to forget that. I'm never going to forget that for sure.
Do you see that as this is similar to those events or different than those events?
Similar but different. Similar but different. We don't want to stop at just Black Lives Matter, because all lives matter. To look at Tony and say that he's black just off his appearance is something that we're basing off legislation that was 150 years old almost now. Less than that. I'm referring to Plessy versus Ferguson. Okay? Terrell is a mixture of everything. You can't look at him and say he's black. He's black, white, he's a mixture of everything, because we all have our own complex heritage. So I would say it's the same, but it's different. We plan to engulf that into a larger movement that's universal, which is the problem with the way that police policies are being carried out, specifically as it pertains to young black men, because the numbers don't lie.
Are there certain changes to those police policies? What are some of them?
I'll speak very, very briefly on that. I'll speak about universal issues such as body cameras. Now, that if the body cameras are around, we don't have this conversation, because we all know exactly what happened. Tasers also, and the use of the procedural force, the force of continuum. You know, not escalating the violence too far as it's brought to you. It's only. I'll leave it at that. And let's be very clear, very, very clear. It takes one bullet from a trained gunman to end a life. It takes one bullet, and we know how many were fired.
Based on what you know, should Officer Kennedy be charged?
I'm not ready to comment on that. I trust Wisconsin and the way they're handling the investigation. We spoke to investigators from DCI. We trust them, and we trust them to handle this with integrity and to treat it as it comes. We don't want our biases involved. We don't want anybody else's. We want them to act as strictly as fact finders, and that's what they've assured us, and we believe in, and we have confidence in that.
Confidence even after you said that you haven't been pleased with the way investigators have worked with the family, or was that with separate between DCI and Madison?
Yeah, those are two separate people, but like I said, you know, just because people trip doesn't mean they're lost. People make mistakes, and we understand that, and we understand this is a very tense situation. There's no real blueprint on how to proceed, so we keep that in mind with everything that goes on. No, we have not. We have not. I'm not prepared to comment on that. I'll take one more question, and then after that, we're done.
What makes Madison different from Ferguson?
What makes Madison different from Ferguson is that it's a de facto liberalism, in the sense that it's on the surface, but underneath. And this is someone that grew up here. I went to East High my 10th grade year. I remember the segregation. Me and all my friends, we sat by the steps. You know, and not to distinguish us because we're all the same, but you know, kids of different ethnicities, they would hang out by the wall. I don't really remember it too well, but I just remember a massive segregation being around, and it's an air of liberalism that's pushed and perceived mostly because of UW and it's being progressive in its history. But when you look at the Capitol, things are a little different in terms of who's actually running the government. So I would say, like I said, it's different, but it's very similar.
And what would you hope that the conversation around the kitchen table would be tonight after people hear you speak?
All right, this is the last comment. I want the conversation to be about Tony Robinson. I want people to find out facts for yourself. You don't need to hear it from me. There's plenty of information. He has a Facebook that has been scrutinized already. But the point is, people have been picking and choosing what they see. They're not using this in the lens of a 19-year-old kid with access to social media who, at any moment, who knows what you might say. So you can look for yourself. You can see what type of kid Tony. You can see the differences in people that support him. Of all creeds, people support him, crying their eyes out. And that's what I want. This is be clear that it's the support from people that makes this easier, and makes it easier to cope with, to know that people truly care about Tony, and truly care about the type of person he was, and not the type of person that he's being perceived as. So with that being said, I appreciate you all coming out. We will and thank you so much for supporting Tony, and I encourage you to hashtag Tony Robinson. Try to find out the facts for yourself. Because the facts are what essentially will clear all the negative air and all the